China, a leak from a vaccine plant has left thousands of local residents with chronic illness. Also, it's been revealed that the Chinese regime has a database of around 2.4 million people and 650,000 institutions that heavily targets influential people overseas. I'll be going in depth into this. And the Chinese regime is also talking about selling off some of its US Treasury securities. However, this could actually benefit the United States. I'll be explaining this, so stick around. Welcome back, everyone. First off, some breaking news. In China, a leak from a vaccine plant has left thousands of local residents with chronic illness. Nikkei reports that in northwest China's Lanzhou city, a biopharmaceutical plant exposed residents to an animal-borne bacterial disease that's highly contagious and also difficult to treat, known as brucellosis. It reports the cause of the outbreak was contaminated exhaust from the Lanzhou Biopharmaceutical Plant, which is under the CCP's state-owned China Animal Husbandry Industry. Symptoms of the disease include recurring fever, severe headaches, joint pain, and other symptoms that can last for years. Now in China, there are very poor regulations when it comes to environmental protection. If you go to Beijing, for example, the smog there is famous. There's pollution of the waterways, pollution of the soil, pollution of the air. Under the Chinese Communist Party, there's not much emphasis on trying to control these things. Industry comes first, and the interests of the party come first. And when it comes to industries like this, state-run industries that have sickened thousands of people, very rarely will local officials who are responsible for this be held accountable for it. And the reason is the Chinese Communist Party typically protects its own. Various forms of corruption when it comes to government officials and the law enforcement agencies in China oftentimes work together. And so they might punish some low-level officials for this. It's very unlikely that the real people involved will be held accountable. Meanwhile, it's been revealed that the Chinese regime has a database of around 2.4 million people and 650,000 institutions that heavily targets influential people overseas. Now, Financial Review reported that a Chinese military contractor was boasting about spreading disinformation and promoting conflicts, again, using this network. It allegedly includes profiles on politicians, academics, technology workers, family members of targeted people, and even information on individuals involved in organized crime. And the data is being used by multiple branches of the CCP for targeting people in foreign countries for various interests, including politicians, including business leaders, and others of influence. Now, the news has caused a stir, particularly in Australia and Canada, since the database includes information on politicians and key influencers in both countries. Canada's Globe and Mail reports that, quote, its files seem to have been cobbled together from various sources. Some catalog news stories, including hundreds of Globe articles, while others are archived Facebook posts from U.S. President Donald Trump about trade tariffs. A large portion of the data appears to have been extracted from the business information website Crunchbase and serves as a Rolodex of social media accounts and contact information for people in all sorts of occupations, from tech executives to university professors. Now, this finding confirms what I reported in an exclusive story back in 2016, where an insider who was directly involved with the CCP's program revealed that the Chinese regime had built a database on Americans using information stolen in cyber attacks. The source of that story revealed that the database worked as an extension of the CCP's domestic surveillance network known as the social credit system. Now, on that story, the source had revealed the CCP had actually used a smart city program built abroad to create its social credit system inside China, and that as part of the social credit system, they had expanded its monitoring of different individuals and its databases on different individuals, not just inside China, but outside China as well. Now, again, the social credit system is a social control system created by the CCP that has a database on every single Chinese citizen. When it comes to this, every person you associate with, every friend you have, every online purchase you make, your political views, your religious views, everything is included in this database. Your profile is used to give you a citizen score, and your citizen score determines your freedom or oppression in that society. Now, the CCP, through its One Belt, One Road initiative, is exporting that program. When they go and build these infrastructure projects in other countries, they also implement the CCP's different forms of technological totalitarian government. That includes these monitoring programs. And it's only natural, based on that that the CCP would want to monitor who people are associating with, not just in China, but also when it comes to foreigners. And the CCP now, according to this database, is also using this, not just for monitoring, not just for social control, but also for targeting. They're looking for individuals of influence who the military or government can target, and they have many programs for that, which we've discussed pretty often on this show. Meanwhile, the new Quad alliance of the United States, Japan, India, and Australia is now moving beyond maritime security. According to the Epoch Times, the alliance is now working on a program called the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, which will form a new global supply chain to counter the Chinese Communist Party. Now, this new supply chain is independent of China, and there are a few different points on this. Remember that some of the different Quad Alliance members, namely Japan and India, have been paying companies to pull their supply chains out of China. The US government just last month finally went through and launched this program, finally implemented it, that forbids US government agencies from buying technologies that have parts sourced from China. And so again, supply chain security is becoming a bigger issue. And now this Quad alliance is working together on this. This is important as well. Now you might remember we've reported previously that the Quad alliance, which is again really formed to counter the CCP's maritime aggression, is growing into becoming a basically NATO-like organization for the Asia-Pacific region. The US is talking about developing it further, even possibly bringing in new member states. Now, you might remember in our previous reporting as well, we talked about how individuals are saying that if the Quad Alliance is going to be validated as a NATO-like institution, a NATO-like organization, it needs to branch out from just being a maritime security force, again built around, say, standing up to the CCP. This new initiative is very much in line with that. It's no longer just maritime security. This is now a security system for these supply chains. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, the territory's chief executive, Carrie is pushing back against concerns that the CCP has ended Hong Kong's autonomy, again under these national security laws. She's declaring that Hong Kong has been under the CCP's control since 1997. She said, according to RFA, that, quote, "The truth of the matter is that Hong Kong's political system is executive-led, with the chief executive at the core and accountable to the central people's government." Now, for those of you who know Hong Kong's history and the agreement it had when the British handed it over to mainland China, it agreed to have a one country, two systems policy. Hong Kong is supposed to have an independent government from the CCP, independent legal systems, and the protections of a free and democratic society. Again, one country, two systems. The CCP is being accused of violating that agreement when it passed this new national security law, again, which extended the CCP's laws into Hong Kong and effectively ended many of the democratic rights that people in Hong Kong once had. And now the CCP is trying to change the narrative on this, it appears. They're saying Hong Kong was always under the CCP, it's still under the CCP, and this is just the way it is. Meanwhile, Disney is still under fire for controversies around its live-action adaptation of Mulan, both in the United States and in China. Senator Marco Rubio and other lawmakers sent a letter to the Walt Disney Company's Chief Executive Officer, Bob Chapek, asking about the company's cooperation with the CCP's security and propaganda authorities in Xinjiang, where part of the movie was filmed. Now, on this controversy, Disney included a thank you note to the CCP security branch in that region, which has been sanctioned for its involvement in the CCP's abuses of Muslim Uyghurs, including with slave camps. And in China as well, the film is being deeply criticized. Now, part of this is for the international backlash the film has caused and the attention it has brought to the CCP's human rights abuses, ironically, despite Disney's attempts to pander to CCP authorities with this film. But even average Chinese citizens are now pushing back against it because they believe it has a poor portrayal of Chinese culture. And now as well, China's equivalent of Netflix, iQIYI, has released its own version of Mulan, which is being touted now in China as a better story of Mulan that sticks closer to the Chinese culture and traditions, although the film still stays pretty close to party lines. And now the broader stories for today. Now, first off, the Epoch Times obtained leaked documents from China that show secret orders to try to keep Japanese and South Korean companies from moving out of China. Last October, Samsung closed its Huizhou City factory in Guangdong province and stopped manufacturing mobile phones in China. In June this year, Samsung announced it's moving its display production line from China to Vietnam. And as we've mentioned previously as well, Samsung is not alone in its departure from China. As the international community is beginning to see the CCP for what it is, Korean, Japanese, Taiwanese, US companies, you name it, including Microsoft, Google, Apple, and others, are moving their production out of China. Now, this leaked internal document of the Huizhou government obtained by the Epoch Times shows that the CCP issued an urgent order to, quote, hold Japan and South Korea. In this order, the Foreign Affairs Office of the Huizhou Municipal Committee wrote, quote, please provide information on cooperation work plans with Japan and South Korea. The Provincial Party Committee of the CCP requested to, quote, make full use of the relatively good external conditions in Southeast Asia's anti-epidemic situation, and to, quote, take the opportunity of fighting the epidemic together to pull in alliances of neighboring countries such as Japan and South Korea. The Huizhou Municipal Bureau of Commerce disclosed recent exchanges and collaboration projects. Among these was the establishment of a Huizhou Economic and Trade Representative Office in South Korea. It is also receiving Japanese, South Korean, and Singaporean companies and institutions to visit Huizhou. And it's also working on returning to key enterprises and carrying out promotions for investments. The CCP is promoting also its One Belt, One Road initiative through Huizhou in order to strengthen economic and trade collaboration with South Korea. These leaked internal documents also show that the order to, quote, hold Japan and South Korea not only has economic considerations, but also has a political strategy related to the CCP's Belt and Road initiative. Now, on that note, the document included the achievements of the Huizhou municipal government's efforts in the Belt and Road Initiative. This included, for example, promoting enterprises to, quote, go global, opening up markets along the Belt and Road Initiative, implementing precise investment promotion planned ahead of time, and repeatedly visiting Japan and South Korea for investment, and also for planning and construction of the China-Korea Huizhou Industrial Park. Now, what does this tell us? The CCP is in crisis control for its economy. We talked before about the issue of the chips, these high-tech chips, and again, the CCP being locked out of the market for that. That means that the CCP's high-tech economy is about to take a major blow, again, possibly a death blow. Its ability to compete on the international market with smartphones, with laptops, and so on is about to be wrecked by the ban on chips. And the CCP, in other regards, is in crisis control when it comes to keeping manufacturing in China. And again, what was the CCP's plan for its economy? If you look at its 5-year economic plans, China 2025 and others, it was talking about trying to build a middle class in China. It was trying to move from being the basic manufacturing hub of the world to becoming its own high-tech economy. They wanted to break out of the low-tech industry, again, manufacturing cheap products for the world, and moving into a high-tech economy, competing directly with the United States, Japan, South Korea, and also Taiwan on these products. That plan has been wrecked again. This not only includes the major blows to China's large tech companies, included among them Huawei when it comes to the ability of it to manufacture its next-generation smartphones. This also includes hits directly on the CCP as the manufacturing hub of the world. And so this means the two major facets of the Chinese economy are taking a hit. Again, when it comes to its plans to build a high-tech economy, that is taking a major hit when it comes to the ban on these chips. And at the same time, when it comes to its ability to be the manufacturing hub of the world, that has also taken a major hit as companies are pulling out of China. The Chinese economy is in a difficult situation right now, and the CCP, again, is in crisis control to try to prevent these things from happening. Now, when it comes to investment, yes, foreign investment is still pouring into China, especially from Wall Street. But how long will that last? Again, China is looking at about 6 months before you start feeling the impact of the chip ban, because it's doing mass imports of these chips. Very likely after that 6 months is up, we're going to start seeing the impact of this. Now also, when it comes to the Chinese economy, The Chinese regime is talking about selling off some of its U.S. Treasury securities. Its state-run news outlet Global Times wrote on September 4th that it could cut about 20% of its $1.08 trillion in holdings, which would bring it down to around $800 billion in holdings. But despite popular belief on the risks of China selling off its U.S. debt, this may be something that could benefit the United States and may instead work against the interests of the CCP. Now let me explain this. Rumors have been circulating in China that the United States may sanction its banks, lock its financial institutions out of the global market, and possibly even seize its holdings of U.S. government securities. All of this is still in the sphere of discussion and rumors, but Chinese analysts have pointed to similar U.S. moves again against Russian financial institutions. South China Morning Post reported that the state-run Development Research Center, under the CCP's State Council, technically their government, is now claiming the United States may seize China's holdings of U.S. government securities if the conflict between the two countries grows. This has also been reported on the U.S. side, but again as rumor. The Washington Post reported back in April that President Donald Trump told his advisors that China should have to pay for its role in allowing the novel coronavirus to spread globally. It cited anonymous sources with alleged knowledge of the meeting. So again, take it for what it is. And it said they claimed that the Trump administration was considering canceling part of the U.S. debt to China as a way to make the CCP pay. The report also claimed that Trump and his aides had discussed removing China's sovereign immunity, which could open the CCP to international lawsuits. And when Trump was asked about these claims in a press conference, he didn't confirm or deny the rumors. And he also said there were other methods of making the CCP pay, including, for example, raising $1 trillion through tariffs on Chinese imports. Now, as we mentioned on the show as well, China owes the U.S. more debt than we owe them. And unlike the United States, they haven't paid a single penny on that debt. The approximately $1.6 trillion the CCP owes to the United States with interest could cancel the U.S. debt to China with cash to spare. All it's going to take is a Trump administration giving it the green light. It does not need approval from the Chinese side. Now, it's still unclear how things will unfold, though. But regardless, the rumors are causing visible worry among Chinese officials. And this plays into more than just money. It's also about security and diplomacy. Now, the Associate Dean of Renmin University of China's School of International Studies in Beijing noted in 2019 that during the 2008 U.S. financial crisis, the CCP's willingness to hold U.S. treasuries helped bring confidence to the U.S. market, and that going forward, the CCP could use its hold on U.S. treasuries as strategic cards to play. And again, that strategic card, it appears, they're now losing. So far, the CCP has sold off only a relatively small portion of its holdings. In March, it sold off $8 billion in U.S. government bonds. And at the end of the day, however, the CCP has more to lose and the United States has more to gain if China did sell off its U.S. debt. Michael Pettis, a finance professor at Peking University in China, wrote a thread on Twitter noting that the big question would be what China would do with the money from the treasuries if it sold them. If it put the money back into U.S. assets, this would have almost no impact on the U.S. economy. It would mean that basically the money comes back into the United States anyways. Now, if it sold off these U.S. treasuries and put that money instead into European euros, Japanese yen, or other international currencies, China would risk actually angering those countries for impacting the value of their currencies against the dollar. Again, at a sensitive time when it comes to the global economic situation with the virus and other issues. And if the CCP were to keep the extra cash domestically, it would likewise have a negative impact on its own currency, again at a very sensitive time for the Chinese economy. Now, in any case, the CCP is looking to lose out. No matter which direction it goes, it only stands to lose. According to the balance, if China did call in its U.S. debt, U.S. interest rates and prices would rise, but experts believe this wouldn't have much of an impact on the U.S. economy. If that were to happen, well, how would this go down? The Federal Reserve would likely buy up the debts anyway, and the Federal Reserve is one of the largest holders of U.S. debt. And although this may increase inflation, it wouldn't be enough to impact anything. And so again, what are we seeing here? The CCP is making noise. The CCP is talking about its ability to sell off U.S. debt and is making empty threats. It's making it appear this is a nuclear option for the CCP, but in reality it would do almost nothing to harm the United States. Instead, the CCP would be the one to lose from this. And so what does this tell us again? The CCP is running out of cards to play when it comes to making arguments. It's threatening this nuclear option, so-called. And many people, of course, believe that China holds U.S. debt and, for example, it could crash the U.S. economy if it sold it off. Its holdings of U.S. debt compared to other countries is not that much, comparatively. And again, even if it were to sell it, the impact on the U.S. economy would be very minimal. Also, very likely the Fed would buy it up anyways. And also, this would cause much more harm to the Chinese economy if they did this. The CCP is again making these claims at a time when they're risking, for example, being cut off from the rest of the global market. And this again comes amid rumors that Chinese financial institutions and banks may face the same types of sanctions that Russian banks and financial institutions were hit with, locking them again out of the U.S. market. The CCP is dealing with the reality of this. They're looking for options and they're realizing now, as it appears, they don't have many options. And again, when it comes to this, when it comes to these bonds, any option the CCP has would work against its interests. Any move they make, they would stand to lose. Now, with that said, folks, again, we're broadcasting 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And also, if you want to support us, please consider supporting us on Patreon. You can find the link to that in the description below. Also, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. As I always mention, if you want to go the extra mile, please share this video. And also, please tell a friend or family member about Crossroads. Now, with that said, please take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and stay free.